This man, because Ayrton Senna yet again has pole position, 1 minute 20.399, with Gerhard Berger second quickest, 1:20.465, Alain Prost third in the Ferrari, 1:20.826, and then Alessandro Nannini on the outside of the second row with the Benetton Ford. His teammate Nelson Piquet is fifth quickest in the other Benetton. Then there's Thierry Boutsen, we've just done a lap with him. And look at the weather, because it was wet on Saturday. All the qualifying times that were any good were set on Friday in the dry, but it's been wet all day today on Sunday, and now with the field going out for their final warm-up lap before the start of the 70-lap race, the circuit is very wet indeed. It's not actually raining now, however. The sky is lifting. Everybody on wet weather tyres very necessarily. But it may well be that we're going to have tyre stops in this race as the circuit dries out. Ayrton Senna in the yellow helmet with the green stripes on the side, Gerhard Berger, his teammate, then Alain Prost, then the two Benettons of Nannini and Piquet, then it's Thierry Boutsen, Nigel Mansell, who had a puncture on Friday in qualifying, and that delayed him a little bit. Behind Nigel Mansell, or indeed joining him on the fourth row, is Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell, the man whom everybody has been talking about after his wonderful second places in Phoenix and in Monte Carlo. On the fifth row, it's Riccardo Patrese in the other Williams. He was second last year, of course. And Stefano Modena, who's qualified well up in the Brabham. On the sixth row, the two yellow Lotuses of Derek Warwick and Martin Donnelly, both, of course, with Lamborghini engines. Row 7, Satoru Nakajima in the other Tyrrell, and Michele Alboreto, who's qualified well up for a change in the footwork arrows. That's Ivan Capelli in the only Leighton House to qualify. He's down with Eric Bernard at the back, with De Cesaris and Caffey on the very back row. We wait now for the red light and then the green, which will start the 70-lap Canadian Grand Prix here in Montreal. There's the red. And Berger moves a bit early, but there's the green. The field move away very cleanly. It's Ayrton Senna who goes past Berger, who was the first to move. And it's McLaren's 1 and 2. It's the Benetton of Nannini that slots into third place. Alain Prost is fourth, and Jean Alesi is muscling his way through the traffic. And a little nudge on the back of Pierluigi Martini. You can see how slippery it is by how gracefully the Minardi spun. He manages to get reverse gear to get himself out of the way of everybody else, but he doesn't seem to be able to find a forward gear. And meanwhile, the McLarens are out in front. It's Senna from Berger. Nannini is third. Alesi has made it up to fourth place. Piquet is fifth. Sixth, it's Alain Prost. Seventh, it's Thierry Boutsen. In eighth place, it's Nigel Mansell. And we think that Gerhard Berger actually did move before the official green light, and we're wondering if he's going to be in trouble for that. But it's McLaren 1 and 2. Jean Alesi making a wonderful start up into fourth place to split the two Benettons, and the two Lotuses are well up as well. So Ayrton Senna settling down, and you can see how already the road is dry at this side of the circuit. Everybody on the wet weather tyres, of course. But when they get over to the other side of the circuit, it's still very, very wet. And I think tyre choice is going to be very important here. Olivier Griard in the blue and orange Azella weaving around to try and keep his place there. But here you see how wet it is. Plumes of spray coming up from those wide back tyres as Senna, Berger, Nannini and Alesi go through in the top four. There's Piquet fifth, there's Prost and Boutsen sixth and seventh there, and Mansell and Patrese eighth and ninth, and Derek Warwick in the yellow Lotus is in 10th place. And still the two McLarens leading the field. Nannini there working away in the cockpit. You can see how wet it is as we look down from the helicopter there. And Michele Alboreto makes a little dart down the inside of Griard's Azella. And traffic everywhere. They're almost three abreast as they come down the start-finish straight in that great midfield gaggle. Oh, and a moment there for Satoru Nakajima, whose Tyrrell was forced onto the curbs by Griard. The arrows has gone past Griard. That's Michele Alboreto, but everybody else queuing up behind the Frenchman. And now it's Philippe Alliot, who seems to be muscling by the Nakajima Tyrrell. But while that midfield battle goes on, at the front, it's Ayrton Senna easing away from his teammate, and we wonder how long it'll be before these two McLaren drivers start to calculate when will be the ideal time to stop for fresh rubber. If you stop too early, you're on slicks on a circuit that is still very slippery, and that can spell disaster. If you leave your stop too late, then your very soft rubber wet weather tyres with their deep treads can overheat, and that can slow you down a lot and you can lose the advantage. And we now have confirmation that there is a 60-second penalty for Gerhard Berger. That McLaren that's in second place has a 60-second penalty for a jump start. So Ayrton Senna is officially in the lead, but Gerhard Berger in second place on the road is in actual fact a long way down. Meanwhile, Jean Alesi has Nelson Piquet right on his tail. And Alesi goes a little bit wide there. That was a mistake by Alesi, and Piquet goes through into an official third place. If you discount Gerhard Berger, it's Senna leading, it's Nannini in second place, it's Piquet now third, so the Benettons are second and third. The Tyrrell of Jean Alesi is fourth, and behind them Thierry Boutsen is leading Alain Prost. That's Alesi, the very talented young Frenchman in his first Canadian Grand Prix. He came into Formula One halfway through last season in his home Grand Prix in France. And meanwhile, Ayrton Senna is already on the tail of Olivier Grouillard in the Azella. And he goes past him in the hairpin, tearing off one of his tear-off visors, I think, as he does so. They have several layers of visor to keep clean. And that's a tangle between Michele Alboreto in the Arrows and Emanuele Pirro in the red Dallara. And it looks as though their race is run. It's still very, very slippery, and Senna's coming in. This is Ayrton Senna's pit stop. We've already had a pit stop for Gerhard Berger, who has gone onto his dry weather tyres early, but this is the leader, Ayrton Senna, coming in. So Alessandro Nannini goes by into the lead, and it looks like a quick one. It's going well. Yes, less than 8 seconds, a great slide from the back tyres as a now slick-shod McLaren goes out, and here comes Nelson Piquet to change his wet weather tyres for dries. So Piquet from third place comes in, Senna rejoins and is in an official second place now. Berger is out there too, but of course has the 60-second penalty, and the Benetton of Alessandro Nannini has not yet stopped. That's Derek Warwick coming in and almost colliding with the Benetton of Piquet as he goes out. And meanwhile, Alesi comes in, so does Boutsen, and so does Alain Prost. So we've got a real traffic jam in the pits. Boutsen's Tyrrell comes in. Boutsen's Williams, I should say. Alesi's Tyrrell and the Ferrari of Alain Prost all come in at once. Boutsen's getting his dry tyres going on, and here's Prost's pit stop, and that too goes well. The Ferrari pit stops are usually very quick indeed, 7.5 seconds stationary, and that's interesting because Prost came in behind Boutsen and has come out in front of him. You saw a glimpse of Nigel Mansell going in too, but here is Alessandro Nannini still on his wet weather tyres and still in the lead, although he has a pit stop to come. And it may be that Nannini has left his pit stop a little bit too late. There's the order after 13 laps with Senna in second place. Mansell, before his pit stop, was in third place, ahead of Alesi, Prost and Boutsen, who have now stopped. And that's interesting. Gerhard Berger goes past Ayrton Senna. Gerhard Berger goes into the lead on the road. Although, remember, of course, he has this 60-second penalty. I think Ayrton Senna will be quite content to let him go because he knows, does Senna, that his teammate Berger has a 1-minute penalty and therefore Senna is still in the lead on the road. They have, of course, radio communication between the pits built into the driver's crash helmet. This is a replay of Senna. Actually, you saw him wave him by. That's interesting. So Senna says to teammate Berger, "OK, chum, you can go by." And this is Nigel Mansell coming in for his tyre stop. Mansell comes in for his stop quite a bit later than teammate Alain Prost. Mansell, who was up into third place by dint of making a later stop, now rejoins another very rapid stop from the Ferrari team. But still, we haven't had Nannini stop. Now here it comes. This is Nannini coming in out of the lead and into the pits to put slick, dry weather tyres on his Benetton Ford. And it has a slightly more leisurely look, that pit stop. It's not as quick, Nannini getting his visor cleaned, but it's quite a bit slower. That was almost 13 seconds. So Nannini's stop 4.5 seconds or so slower than the best of the McLaren and Ferrari stops. And now we're watching Gerhard Berger, who is in the lead on the road but is well down the placings on the computer once that 1 minute penalty is taken into account. Stefano Modena, meanwhile, has Berger on his tail. Modena in the Brabham, about to be lapped by both Berger and the leading McLaren of Ayrton Senna. And you can see how wet it still is off the dry line. The cars have worn a drying line, but if you get off that line, it can still be very, very slippery indeed. And that's always a problem if you have a slower car to lap. Do you wait for the slower car to get offline to let you through? This is Modena, a cockpit view, and he's got the McLaren in his mirrors. He's waiting for Berger to come through. He's got another car in front of him as well. And there you see the quite different colour tarmac between the dry and the wet. So Modena closing and in fact passing the car in front of him. That's Satoru Nakajima in the Tyrrell. A very neat manoeuvre there, and in fact into the pits now comes Nakajima. He was on his way to the pits for his dry weather tyres. Oh, and a problem for Nannini. He's punctured a right front tyre. There's a damaged front wing which seems to have punctured his front tyre, and just behind him a collision between Boutsen and Alesi. So I think we may well see Boutsen and Alesi coming in to sort out some damage, or at least Boutsen. We're back with Modena now. Berger has passed him, but Modena now has the other McLaren of Ayrton Senna, the car which is actually in the lead, on his tail. And there is Alesi coming into the pits. You see that his front left-hand aerofoil has been torn off. So Boutsen seems to have got away with that little manoeuvre, but there is poor Nannini coming in for his second pit stop. We understand that he hit some sort of small furry animal which tore off the front left-hand aerofoil and in turn punctured his left front tyre. So Nannini, the former leader of the race, getting a new nose cone, new front wings and his third set of tyres for this race. And meanwhile we've got a battle between Prost and Boutsen, because Boutsen is determined to get past Prost. And Prost is staying on the dry line and isn't going to make it easy for Boutsen to get by. They've got some back markers to pass, so of course Boutsen will probably try to snatch his moment when they come up to lap a back marker. But Prost is a very experienced man indeed, very difficult to flurry Alain Prost, the most successful Grand Prix driver of all time. Thierry Boutsen, last year's winner also, of course, in the wet Australian race, a man who prides himself on his skill in wet conditions, winding in Alain Prost, but not quite sure how he's going to find a route by. The car they've got to come and lap, I think, is Nicola Larini with the Ligier. And they follow that dry piece of tarmac. They're winding in the Ligier very quickly. Now, this could be a problem for Prost. Is he going to be cautious passing the Ligier, or is he going to take a chance and get onto the wet? He has a look. He gets onto the wet. It is very wet. Spray coming up from his front tyres. He decides not to. And Boutsen's having a go. And Boutsen loses it. Boutsen goes onto the wet to get past Prost. Gets alongside him, loses control, and punts Nicola Larini's Ligier off into the barriers. And I would hazard a guess that Boutsen's car is also pretty damaged there, and I think that could well be the end of Boutsen's race. So the challenge to Prost, second place, over as far as Boutsen is concerned. We see it once more. Boutsen comes down the outside, gets on the wet, loses control of the Williams, comprehensively smashes into poor Nicola Larini's car, damages his own car, and we now know that both of them are out. So Ayrton Senna in the lead, not in the lead on the road because Gerhard Berger with his 1 minute penalty is still in front of him, but Ayrton Senna leading the race. Oh, and off the road is Jean Alesi. He's already had a second pit stop. He's now had a spin which will drop him further down. In fact, I think that will put him down in about 9th place behind Martin Donnelly, who is 8th in the other Lotus, and it's brought Alesi out just in front of Ayrton Senna once more. And Senna, I think, won't be in too much of a hurry to go past Alesi. He's going to pick his moment. Alesi certainly has been off the road, and Senna doesn't want to make any mistakes. Oh, and there's a big mistake for Alessandro Nannini. Alessandro Nannini has spun heavily. He was coming under the bridge. He was lapping the other Tyrrell of Nakajima. He gets onto the wet, manages to miss Nakajima as the car snaps out of control. His wheels are locked. He goes onto the mud and backwards very heavily into the barriers, the tyre barrier, which cushions his impact, fortunately, and Nannini is out of that car. He's unhurt, but he's very much out of the race. And now, a challenge for that second place of Alain Prost coming now from Nelson Piquet in the Benetton. Nelson Piquet has wound in Alain Prost's Ferrari. Piquet, oh, that's Alesi! A tremendous impact by Alesi, who went off exactly where Nannini went off and has absolutely destroyed Nannini's car. He's cut it in half. Nannini, of course, happily had already walked away from that car, and Alesi is already walking away, but Alesi goes off on exactly the same wet spot that Nannini had got off in a mirror accident. The car slides sideways and backwards with locked wheels over the mud, goes into Nannini's abandoned Benetton and comes to a halt on top of the tyres. Well, while all that excitement was going on, Riccardo Patrese has been going slower. He's got a brake problem, we understand, and they're going to change the wheels. I don't know if they can do any work on the brakes. This is a very hard circuit on brakes here in Montreal, incidentally. But the mechanics, the Williams mechanics, looking all over the car, looks as though one of them has burnt his hand on that right rear brake, which is clearly very, very hot indeed. And they're loosening off. Oh, yes, the fluid storming out. The fluid comes sprouting out of the brake and actually catches fire on the rear brake disc. That is one overheating brake. They've let the fluid out and they're putting the tyres back on, but I don't know whether that's now going to be a competitive situation for Riccardo Patrese. He's lost an awful lot of time, but they are putting fresh Goodyears onto the number 6 Williams Renault, and they're talking to Patrese. No, Patrese is shaking his head. I don't think he's very happy about the situation at all. Meanwhile, the battle for second place goes on, and it's now a 3-car battle for second place, because as Ayrton Senna sets a new lap record on the drying track, Prost is still in second place. Nelson Piquet is the meat in the Ferrari sandwich in his Benetton in third place, and he's going through into second place. Yes, Nelson Piquet goes effortlessly, it seems, past Alain Prost's Ferrari and takes second place. Ferrari is now third and fourth. Nelson Piquet's Benetton is second. It's still Ayrton Senna's McLaren leading. Benetton second for Piquet. Ferrari third for Prost. Ferrari fourth for Nigel Mansell. And in fifth place, incidentally, the official fifth place man now is Gerhard Berger. With that 60 seconds penalty, his McLaren going very quickly has clambered back up to fifth place. We see a replay once more of Piquet going through past Prost, and Prost just let him go. Alain Prost had obviously decided he wasn't going to be able to deny Piquet his second place anymore, and I think that all is perhaps not quite well with that Ferrari, because Nigel Mansell is now clambering all over the back of Alain Prost as Prost struggles to stay in contact with Nelson Piquet. Sixth man is Derek Warwick in the Lotus Lamborghini, so he's running in the points at the moment. And Piquet working his way past the back markers. He's just past the Onyx of Gregor Wojtek. And Nigel Mansell having a little look at Alain Prost. I think that we may well see the two Ferraris change places any moment. Piquet, meanwhile, working his way through these back markers, and Prost moves to the left waves Nigel Mansell by. Nigel Mansell goes through, so it's now Mansell's Ferrari third, Prost's Ferrari fourth, Gerhard Berger on the clock, lapping a lot quicker than Alain Prost and starting to look threatening for his fourth place. Derek Warwick still in sixth place, and Ayrton Senna in a comfortable lead. Mansell, meanwhile, having to work pretty hard to work his way through these back markers. It is still slippery off that dry line, even though we have got a new lap record for Ayrton Senna. This is a replay of Prost waving Mansell by. Mansell having to hit the brakes very hard to avoid contacting the back of the Onyx of Gregor Wojtek. And there is Derek Warwick, our sixth place man, coming up to lap his own teammate Martin Donnelly. And Donnelly's in trouble. Yes, flames from the back of the number 12 Lotus Lamborghini. Martin Donnelly clearly with major mechanical maladies with the Lamborghini engine, as out comes the checkered flag. The checkered flag is waved for Gerhard Berger, who is first to complete the 70 laps. So he gets the checkered flag, but it's the checkered flag for Ayrton Senna that we're all waiting for, because Ayrton Senna is coming home on his final half lap. His final half lap of the 70 to win the 1990 Canadian Grand Prix for McLaren. Yes, there is the finish line for Ayrton Senna. Up comes his clenched right fist in a delighted gesture of victory. Ayrton Senna the winner by 10.5 seconds from Nelson Piquet's Benetton, with Gerhard Berger in that McLaren finally splitting the Ferraris. Mansell is third, Berger splits them in fourth place, Prost is fifth, and Derek Warwick is sixth, 2 laps behind.
Yeah, I think it was difficult for everybody. The conditions were just quite slippery to start with wet tires, and then when we changed to slick tires, the circuit is not completely dry, and you must stay on the line, because if you go a little bit offline, you have a problem. To overtake other cars, you have also a big problem, because you must stay on line. It was very dirty offline. So it was a very tough race for everybody, I'm sure.
Any problems with the car at all during the race?
Yeah, I had earlier on the first gear broken. When I come for the pit stop for changing tires, I don't know what happened. First gear just broke, and then I start using second only at some places. But it was okay. I was concerned with the gearbox if first gear would damage other gears, but fortunately it went the whole race.
Of course, you were having a close race with your teammate, but he got a 1-minute penalty. He was ahead on the road. What period of the race did you know that? As soon as you'd stopped, or did they tell you over the radio?
No, as soon as he was penalized, the team told me over the radio, when I was still ahead of him, I think, in the circuit itself. So I knew he was 1 minute penalized, so I tried to go as quick as I could, of course, but I wasn't racing him, because it was not a point at all.
Nelson, congratulations, a fabulous second place. The Benetton going very well indeed now. You had quite a tough race there with first Alain Prost, and Nigel Mansell was pushing you hard. Tell us about the dice with the 2 Ferraris.
Well, at the beginning of the race, I saw Alain was a big problem with the traction. My car was not very good also in the wet. I have all the setup for the dry condition, and soon the circuit started to be dry. I started to be quicker, and I could see that I was a little bit quicker than Prost in the braking, and I overbrake him, and it happened. And after that, Mansell was pushing hard in my back, and I was trying to survive.
Nigel, another great race. You came through and pushed Nelson very hard indeed at the end. Your car looked as though maybe you were having a little bit of problems in the dry. Maybe you had it too set up for the wet. Am I correct?
Well, a little bit, but we had a compromise, but I had big oversteer, and one of the biggest problems I had was coming out the hairpin. The automatic box was missing 1 gear every other lap, and you lose that just coming onto the straight, and before you know, you've lost about 50 yards.
What about the rest of the race? There was obviously a lot of problems overtaking traffic. You did a lot of overtaking in this race. At the beginning, you had to keep to the dry line and then just wait, be patient?
Yeah, you had to be patient, and as Ayrton and Nelson have said, the trouble was, as soon as you go offline to overtake, it can take maybe 1 lap or even a lap and a half before you get good grip back. And a few drivers were very good, they moved offline, but a few other drivers, they just stayed right on the line and forced you offline, and it spoilt the race at the end a little bit.
Well, it didn't spoil it, of course, for Ayrton Senna, because the Brazilian, very happy with the result of this race. It has extended his World Championship lead considerably over his own teammate Gerhard Berger. Senna now on 31 points, with Berger second with 19, Alain Prost third with 14, Jean Alesi 1 point behind in 4th place, and Nelson Piquet coming into the picture in 5th place with 12 points. Riccardo Patrese still there despite his non-finish today. In the Constructors' Championship, of course, McLaren still ruling the roost, 50 points to the 21 of Ferrari and the 18 of Williams.